Hey guys, what's up? MadSeason here, back with another video for you. Once again, I'll be your tour guide today for the long-lost alpha client for vanilla World of Warcraft. This is a pretty long-running series at this point where we cover all of the weird things that never made it into the release version of the game. In an earlier episode, we mentioned a spot in Ashara for an abandoned MOBA battleground called the Ashara Crater, but as it turns out, it wasn't the only one planned. So if you didn't know, shortly after Warcraft 3 launched, someone made a mod for it called Dota, which is short for Defense of the Ancients. This would birth what would eventually become a multi-billion-dollar genre of game called the MOBA, which is now dominated pretty securely by Riot's League of Legends and Valve's Dota 2. But as it turned out, World of Warcraft would try their hand with Vanilla's missing fourth battleground with Kalidar. So first off, here's just an overhead map of what they had until it was eventually scrapped. And anybody who's played MOBAs before will recognize the general layout. You have three main lanes with the Horde base in the northeast and Alliance in the southwest. So starting from the Horde side and taking a side lane, you'll notice a bunch of huts which would presumably spawn creatures. Obviously the idea is that each of these lanes would have towers and creeps that spawn, which will try to push into enemy territory, and you have to push with them, take out towers, and kill other players trying to do the same thing. Aside from that, you also have these side areas where neutral mobs spawn that you can kill for extra income and bonuses. And usually there's also a raid boss that spawns every now and then that requires multiple people, but if you can kill it or steal the kill from the other team, you get a big advantage. So here we have the Alliance's base. These main bases would serve as a form of defense and respite where you would spend currency to buy items or buffs, most likely. And going across the opposite side, it's the same thing. It's pretty much just mirrored from the other lane. You got some huts and caves where you would farm NPCs, and this would eventually lead back to the enemy's base. But going in the middle, we see a giant tower, which you could probably capture, and off to the side, another cave system, and on the opposite side, a goblin alchemy lab, so maybe more enemies to kill, or possibly even NPCs to recruit. Who knows? No one really knows why this was cut, but I do have a theory personally, and that's because we already got a MOBA battleground. It's Alterac Valley. Just think about it. You can summon NPCs, these Ram Riders, Griffin Riders, Knights, and raid bosses to push forward along the way, capturing towers which have ranged defenders, and you can kill optional neutral mobs for bonuses. In the middle spawns a giant raid boss that both factions can kill, and one side wins when they push the enemy back to their home base. Alterac Valley is this pseudo MOBA battleground adapted for an MMO setting, so my guess is that the reason why they scrapped this is maybe it was too redundant. I'm not sure. It's interesting though, and I think if they ever go down the Classic Plus route, this is just begging to be finished. I think that it would be a really interesting game mode that could have a lot of potential in the MMO setting. Do you know what's also interesting? The premier meal delivery service, Factor 75. As you may know, I only take sponsors on stuff that I like or actually use, and I actually used Factor 75 during my rank 14 grind. When you're PvPing like a degenerate goblin for 14 hours a day, you don't really have the time or patience to cook, so I did sign up for this for the duration of my grind actually, and I was quite pleased. If you don't know, basically it's a ready-to-eat meal service for those who are maybe juggling work and gaming or grinding rank 14, I guess. Every meal is chef crafted and dietitian approved. It's never frozen and ready to eat in just a few minutes, and you can choose from 35 different weekly options like Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, or even vegan and veggie. And there's also 60 add-ons like breakfast, snacks, and beverages to explore. I found it very helpful to save time on shopping or spending a lot of time in the kitchen. You just heat your meal and you get back to whatever you were doing. And they do also offer flexible plans where you can adjust your order size from either 4 to 18 meals a week, and also pause or reschedule your deliveries whenever you need. You can get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders using my link. So if that interests you, click the link in the description or scan the QR code with your phone. In previous episodes, we gave the major cities some love. we checked out Alpha Ironforge, Stormwind, and Orgrimmar. So this time we're going to take a look at the Undercity, which has two main big changes. The first is there's this second level to the Outer Ring. Each quarter has these set of stairs leading to these balconies where you can find some trainers and vendors. And my guess as to why this was changed was that, much like Alpha Ironforge, it was just too confusing and people were getting lost maybe. That seems to be a theme with the major cities in the Alpha. And the other difference is that the Inner Ring, which, as you may know, holds the auction house, is now a river of slime with bridges leading to the Outer Ring, making it much more harder to navigate, so just a convenience change here if I had to guess. Next up, we have the original Gadgetzan, which looks very different. It's missing that wall that surrounds the city, at the moment doesn't have any guards, and in general it looks much more sparse. A lot of the buildings are changed and they're more resembling the buildings from Booty Bay, and there's just a few NPCs loitering about, so it's clearly still a work in progress. Since we're here though, I may as well give you the full Tanaris tour. Steamqueedle Port also looks much different. It's much bigger with more buildings strewn about, and the docks are also bigger, and there's a ship moored there. There's no boatmaster to be found, but if you remember from a previous episode, there was this mysterious boat in Theramore, so maybe it would have connected the two zones. Geographically, it makes sense since you could just go along the eastern coast here. You probably could do it even without a loading screen, sort of like that boat in Fairless for the Alliance. That would have been amazing, honestly, because it's always annoying getting to Tanaris for the first time as Alliance. You may be asking yourself, well, that's all well and good, but what about the Horde? To which I reply, fuck the Horde. Next up, we also have some NPC changes. The Wastewander Rogues have that sleek Defias rogue model that most people first encountered in the Dead Mines with Roxor's guards. And as for the Warlocks, they also look very different. I don't even think that this model ever made it to the game. I definitely don't recognize it, at least. Quergo's Gold is also moved. It's now much further up north on the eastern coast where that little pirate town was, where you get the pirate hats and you kill Andre Firebeard. That's missing completely, so when they added it in, they moved Quergo's Gold to the southern coast. The Caverns of Time also look a little bit different. The doors definitely changed, and if you're wondering, unfortunately there is no actual cavern at this point. It just leads into the mountain. As for Zul'Farrak, it does exist, but it is uninstanced, and the trolls have a different model. The whole area is populated aside from the bosses, and I'm not sure if this is because it was a work in progress, but it could very well have been intended to be a high-level elite area instead of an instance, sort of like Jinta Alor in the Hinterlands, for instance. Remember, this was early 2000s. Instanced areas that people had for themselves was still a new thing, and these shared open areas filled with high-level enemies was the standard for what a dungeon was. If you remember from a previous episode, they were planning the same for Skolemans, but much like ZF, they ended up converting it into a dungeon. It does kind of make you wonder, though, how many more dungeons there could have been. Jinta Alor could have definitely been one, or possibly the Tainted Scar in Winter Spring, I can definitely see. So maybe another candidate for Classic Plus content if they ever go down that route. Although at the same time, I do think that there's value in open areas as well. I did also take a peek at those unmapped islands to the east that were used for the Scepter of the Shifting Sands questline. They do exist in this version, but they are a bit different, holding some gnomish and goblin buildings with a bunch of gadgets lying about. If you've seen previous episodes, you'll know that I also like to mix in some system stuff here and there. So first, starting with resistances. If you didn't know, Holy was originally a resistance, and it was buffable by priests. This would eventually be replaced with Arcane for some reason, which meant that aside from potions, there's no way to mitigate Holy damage in the game. And a question you might ask yourself then is, does that mean the Gnome racial is also Holy? And the answer to that is no, because at this point, a lot of the racials weren't even added yet, so the only reason to pick Gnome right now is because of their dashing good looks. As for the next class on our list, we have the Rogue. I mentioned this in the Hunter video, but at this point, Rogues, along with Hunters, are able to equip bucklers, not shields. At this point, there are two shield types, bucklers and shields, where the latter is more bulky, they had more armor and block, and were reserved for strength classes, like the Warrior and Paladin. and the bucklers on the other hand weren't as good. They're a little more lightweight, giving less protection. You may have heard before that rogues were at one point able to feign death. This was done with their feign death skill here, which required a reagent called a death capsule, which you crafted like a poison. Cheap shot at this point is cheap as hell, true to its name, as it is a 5-second stun, as well as adding some damage to an attack. And you'll also notice at this point that a lot of these abilities are daggers and swords only. Rogues can equip maces at this point in the game, but they just can't hardly use any abilities with them. Evasion functioned similarly, except it also pacifies you now. I guess rogues are bad multitaskers. And as for the graphic, it leaves a lot to be desired. Feint was dangerous, as it required the target to be facing you. Alright, let me just reduce my threat here real quick. Oh, I cleared my threat. You may be thinking, that's weird. An ability that requires the target to be facing you. It must be one of those weird alpha things they got rid of. To which I say, you failed rogue school because you forgot about Gouge, which is also completely overpowered because it has no cooldown. And at this point, I'll remind you that there are also no diminishing returns. What were they thinking? Sprint is the same, aside from the animation just being a sped up walk cycle. This was the case in 1.0 though. I remember when they updated it to give an actual run animation, and it was pretty exciting. Yeah, my life was pretty boring. Sinister Strike is functionally the same, except it has this cool graphic. Why did they remove this? It's cool. Kidney Shot lasted 2 seconds for every combo point, which may seem broken, but wait until you see Garrote, which at this point was usable out of stealth. It was a combo point spender. It dealt damage over time and stunned the target for 10 fucking seconds per combo point. Imagine being hit by a 50-second stun while your health is getting drained. That's when you go get your beer. Well, that's pretty broken. But wait, how about a no cooldown stunning combo point generator? You know, to build up to the 50-second stun. They also had Trip, which deals some damage and knocks the target down, stunning them for a second with no cooldown. Holy shit. Aside from that, everything is the same. I'm not sure how much PvP was going on at this point in the game, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that rogues made people uninstall. Speaking of OP crap, this is kinda random, but you know how in the game you can loot these low-level items that turn out to be incredibly powerful? Like the best crowd control in the game, Magic Dust, which you get from level 15 elementals in Westfall. What's up with that? It's just one of those weird vanilla things. But if you thought that was broken, in the same zone from the Defias Trappers, at this point you could get what was called a hooked net, which immobilized any target from range for 10 seconds. Sort of like a farmable, really sticky glue. It was removed from the game because it was incredibly broken, obviously, but I guess the Magic Dust flew under the radar. Thanks for watching my video. There's a lot more to come in this series, and we'll return to it every now and then, so make sure to check back. And aside from that, remember to like it if you liked it, because I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Farewell for now, mortals. We hope you enjoyed today's video. See you again soon.